Okay, so this is going to be one of the most useful tricks that I show you guys ever. It's not something Apple really wants you to know because if everyone knew about it, then their batteries would get killed in half the amount of time. So let's talk about how to double your battery life. Now I'm going to show you some tips in here and tricks that are built into your MacBook, or any laptop really, that can drastically reduce the amount of power that your computer uses. Therefore, you're going to have much longer battery life. Again, these are features that Apple doesn't really want you to know about because they don't really make a big deal about it. In fact, when you go through the different settings, it's kind of buried in there. But I'm going to show you exactly where to look. So sit back, relax, and I'm going to show you how you can literally double your battery. Okay, so the very first thing that you can do is actually disable the pointer. Now, what is the pointer? The pointer is that little circle underneath your mouse pointer. As you can see right now when I move my mouse around, you'll see that little circle appear.
How this feature was introduced years ago, but people love it.
However, it does take a small amount of power to display that.
So if you're someone who doesn't need it or really even care about it, then just turn it off. To do that, all you need to do is click on your Apple menu, then go down to System Settings, then go over to Accessibility. Then scroll down until you see Pointer. Once you're in the Pointer section, scroll down again until you see Pointer Options. In here, you can uncheck the box next to Show Pointer. That way you'll never see it again unless you want to. And again, this is something that's very minor, but it will definitely help with battery life. Now, another thing you can do is actually disable the scroll bar. Now, you might think that this is very important, and you do need the scroll bar, but honestly, you don't. Again, this is another feature that Apple doesn't really tell you about. It's kind of buried in here, but I'm going to show you exactly where to find it. And to turn this off, we're actually going to go back to System Preferences. And this time, we're going to go over to Trackpad. Scroll down a little bit, and you're going to see a section called Scroll Bars. In here, you can disable the scroll bars altogether, so you can uncheck all of these boxes. Basically, they work exactly the same way as the pointer option. If you don't use them, you don't need them. So why have them turned on? They take up additional power to display those things on your screen. So if you don't need them, turn them off. All right, now let's talk about displays. So obviously, if you're running on battery power, the display is probably one of the biggest resource hogs on your system. In fact, depending on what you're doing, it could account for 60 to 80% of the power draw on your MacBook. So the first thing I want to talk about is actually adjusting the brightness. Obviously, if you have your MacBook maxed out at full brightness, it's going to be drawing more power than if it was dimmed down. So just check that real quick. Go ahead and dim it down until you're comfortable. I'm going to leave it just above minimum just because I like a little bit of light there. Now, another thing you can do is actually reduce the number of colors that your MacBook is displaying. Most MacBooks are capable of displaying millions of colors. However, do you really need that many colors? Probably not. And by reducing the amount of colors that your MacBook shows, you're going to be able to save on some serious power. To do this, we're going to go back into our system settings, and this time, we're going to click on Displays. Once you're in here, scroll down a little bit, and you're going to see a section called Color. In here, instead of having it set to the default of millions of colors, you can choose from a variety of options. I recommend setting it to either 16.7 million colors or 8 million colors. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Another great feature that you can use to reduce the amount of power your display uses is actually enable auto brightness. Now, this is a feature that's been on MacBooks forever. However, a lot of people don't even know it exists because, again, it's pretty well hidden. So I'm going to show you exactly where to find it. Basically, this is going to allow your MacBook to detect the amount of ambient light in your environment and adjust the brightness accordingly, so you won't have to worry about manually dimming it down. To do this, we're actually going to click on our Apple menu and then click on System Preferences. Then go over to Accessibility and scroll down until you see Displays. Once you're in here, scroll down a little bit and you're going to see an option called Automatically Adjust Brightness. Simply click on this, and now your MacBook will automatically dim and brighten based on the amount of ambient light in your environment. Now, another thing you can do is actually change the backlight. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you go to System Preferences and then go to Desktop and Screensaver and then go to Wallpaper, you can actually change the amount of light that's emitted from your display. So if you're someone who has their MacBook in a dark room, maybe watching a movie at night, you can actually reduce the amount of light that's being emitted from your display to make it easier on your eyes. In addition to that, you're also going to save on battery life. So if you're watching movies at night or working in a dimly lit room, go ahead and set your wallpaper to something that reflects less light. So far, everything I've talked about has been relatively easy to do, but this next one is definitely going to have the biggest impact on your battery life.
and it's actually enabling low power mode. Now, low power mode is a feature that's been around since forever. However, people tend to be afraid of it because they think that it's going to ruin their experience on their MacBook. Trust me, it won't. In fact, I've been using low power mode on my MacBook for years, and I don't even notice that it's there. All it does is reduce the amount of power that your CPU uses, so you're going to get better battery life. To enable this, simply click on your Apple menu, then go to System Settings, then go to Battery, and then click on Battery again. And in here, simply click on the checkbox next to Optimize Battery Charging. Now your MacBook is in low power mode. Now, if you don't want to permanently enable low power mode, you can also do it temporarily. To do that, simply press and hold the Option key while clicking on the battery icon in your menu bar. And now, you're in low power mode. Release the Option key, and you're back to normal. So if you're someone who doesn't need the extra processing power of your CPU, then you should definitely consider putting your MacBook in low power mode. Now, the last trick I'm going to share with you today is actually a combination of a few different things. And it's not really something that Apple talks about, but it's actually a really good idea. And that is to put your MacBook in sleep mode when you're not using it. Now, sleep mode isn't the same as turning it off. When you turn your MacBook off, all of the RAM is cleared and it starts fresh when you power it back on. However, when you put it in sleep mode, all of the RAM stays there. So when you wake it up, it's almost instant. However, it's not using any power. So if you're leaving your MacBook for an extended period of time, just put it to sleep. And to do that, simply close the lid. If you have a MacBook without a touch bar, you can also press and hold the power button to put it to sleep. So there you have it. Those are some amazing tricks that you can use to increase your battery life on your MacBook. And again, they're not really things that Apple talks about. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.